I went to see a healer recently. I'm going to tell you about it now. If we've never met before, my name is Brent, and I'm a productivity coach. And a lot of these videos I make are autobiographical because I want to share with you the story of my awakening and as I ascend into higher and higher levels of my growth, not because I'm interested in just talking about myself and just running my mouth about my own personal life, but because it became clear to me at a certain point a little while ago that my life isn't just my own, and my story isn't just my own. And whenever I tell a story to somebody about an authentic experience that I've had, some sort of challenge that I faced or some sort of insight that I've gained that's allowed me to cross a river of sorts, to step into a new level of success, then that story tends to resonate with other people. Almost invariably, when I tell a real story about myself, the person that I'm telling the story to, they recognize themselves in that story. And why wouldn't they? Because at the very end of the day, there's no major difference between you and me. It's not like you're some sort of different thing than from me. We're all the same thing, and we're just going through a handful of different journeys and different stories. And so that's why I wish to tell you about this story that I'm going to get into, because I no longer even really see myself as a distinct person, some sort of separate thing. I don't even really consider myself to be anything in any solid, particularly defined way. So in sharing this with you, it's just sharing the story of God moving through life. It's just sharing the story of one unfolding person. And so we begin. I saw a healer. I'd worked with her before, and our session, which was just a few days ago now from this present day of filming, I came to her with this question of, like, what is this pulsing in my head? Why do I have this massive headache that, I'd already determined was a result of like the intense mind activity that was going on, as opposed to like something I should go to a physical doctor for. I knew it was just like an energetic kind of psycho-emotional thing that I was experiencing. So I'm like, what's going on? Why do I have this pounding headache? Why do I feel so depressed? And she took a minute to get in touch with it intuitively, because I was telling her about how it felt like sort of a blanket, like a heavy, heavy lead blanket that was on top of me, when instead she asked a question. Is it really that you are growing and expanding against a boundary? And I was like, that makes more sense. Like that resonates as true. This is true. Yes, I'm expanding against a boundary. And so we looked into the nature of this expansion and this boundary. And what it was is me pushing against something that I've been pushing against for a very long time, which was, to summarize it, it was to embody my authentic self, a new level of authenticity that for a long time I have been avoiding doing, delaying doing. And so she said, okay, are you willing to step into that authenticity now? Are you willing to do it? And I was like, gosh, I don't think so. Probably not, because it doesn't feel very safe. This level of authenticity refers to me being willing to stand on my own 2 feet. The problem that I had been encountering was one of authority. I love listening to teachers and collecting perspectives on life. For example, most recently I've been reading some of Ken Wilber's stuff and his massive, all-encompassing integral theory. But this is, of course, in addition to one of my other favorite speakers, Matt Kahn, who speaks from, as far as I can tell, entirely outside of integral theory. It's very difficult to get these two modalities to speak to each other. And if I'm being honest with you, I can appreciate and approach life from many different ways. I can see life from the perspective of, say, a concrete, rational point of view. And yet if I'm speaking to somebody who's, say, a healer, an energy healer, I can appreciate things from their perspective too. If somebody talks about speaking with non-physical entities, channeling non-physical entities, speaking with their spirit guides, all of that makes perfect sense to me. And this is what I do too. The idea of having spirit guides, this is real to me. Talking with them, channeling them, asking them questions, all of that's real to me. And so I'm really adept at going from perspective to perspective and seeing life from all of these different ways. But then there comes this issue of authority, of speaking about life, about reality, about truth, as it appears to me. Why would I have the authority to speak about life and reality as it appears to me? My thinking used to go. And so therefore, it seemed like I had to study all of the different modalities, all of the philosophies, all of the different ways of thinking, as if I were preparing for a PhD. Where my understanding is, if you're preparing for a PhD, part of the examination is to stand in front of a handful of your peers who sit in chairs and ask you the hardest questions, the hardest and toughest questions. And you have to be able to answer them competently, satisfactorily. And if you can, then you get to join the League of the PhDs and become an authority. And if you can't, then you have to go try again later. And it feels that way. So say if I want to talk about spirit guides, suppose if I were to have a conversation with a rationalist, materialist kind of person, I should be able to prove the existence of spirit guides or entities or the different layers of the aura and whatever else. And so underneath there's been this fear of saying something that's wrong, saying something untrue, running the risk of leading somebody astray. So say if I make a video and I present some information that turns out to be false, but then suppose you, the viewer, took some action on it and something bad happened as a result, how could I live with myself? And so all these issues of authority would have me hide behind a shield where I would take very, very careful care not to say anything of true substance or say anything that could be disproven. So I'd only say something that was really, really rigorously tested as much as possible. Or alternatively, to borrow authority from the speakers that I admire. So I may quote David Hawkins or Adyashanti or Eckhart Tolle. But that's no good, because what I know at the very bottom is that this issue of authority is that there's any real such thing as authority, in that there's nobody that really truly has any authority. Because if you think about it, who has the authority to speak about reality? You might think, well, a scientist does. And a scientist is somebody who has maybe performed a series of experiments and has gathered a bunch of information, and they can speak authoritatively about that data. But I don't know. To me, that's not the same as being able to speak about truth or being able to speak about reality, or to speak about anything other than the results of those experiments. Does a philosopher have authority? Somebody who's given deep thought into the nature of truth? Maybe. Or is it just a person who has created a lot of information about truth? There's an interesting quality about enlightenment whenever I learn about enlightenment, and when I learn about the growth of an ego. the growth and development of an ego, of a personality, is that at a relatively high stage, you can get deeply caught up in the multitude of ways of approaching things, of perspectives, of studies, and you can take great delight in comparing the different studies, bringing them together, unifying them. But it seems that there's a step beyond information and there's a step beyond perspectives where you are no longer relating to reality through a particular lens or through information, through a perspective. In fact, there's no understanding anymore because the understanding part implies a duality between me and the reality, me and the experience. If I'm trying to figure out the experience, for example, if I'm trying to figure out reality, then I'm not really being reality. I'm not really being experience. I'm not one with it. I'm not going as it. So at a certain point, it seems that understanding is dropped. The need to understand, the desire to understand, because it's really, there's no bottom to the understanding. Ultimately, we just produce information, we just produce ideas until we stop. Until we discover its true fruitlessness to deliver what we're looking for. Which brings us to the main idea, the main thrust of this video, which is the question, are you trying to become that which you already are? Notice the impossibility of this question, the slight paradox behind this question. Are you trying to become that which you already are? Whenever we try to do something, this is self-help, self-improvement 101. We never say the word try. Try always implies failure. If you're trying to do something, it means you don't expect to succeed in doing that thing. Are you trying to become that which you already are? How do you become that which you already are? How do you do that which is already done? It's already done. You already are. It's impossible. The only thing here that there is to be done is for the effort to be dropped. There's a survival mechanism around the effort to become. See, in my case, as I was speaking with this healer, there's a lot of fear around dropping this idea of becoming who I am, because if I were just to step into the authority and say something from my own authority as opposed to borrowed authority from somebody else, it feels vulnerable, subject to debate, subject to attack. One of my favorite speakers, Lee Harris, on the subject of offloading authority. Lee Harris talks about how historically there used to be a persecution of people who would tell the truth, who would really speak the truth. Speak the truth to power, the power of the monarchy, for example, or the power of religion. And that would get you in a lot of trouble. You get killed for that. You get tortured for that. And that sort of experience leaves a mark on human consciousness that is born into new generations. And you can view this from many different perspectives. You can view this from the esoteric perspective of past lives and past life memory. But you can also experience this from the perspective of just unprocessed pain in humanity, just in the human field. Even in my upbringing, it was a Catholic upbringing. And if I made a joke, say as a child, an innocent joke that was sort of blasphemous. I remember once I was in a restaurant and we paid and we were getting ready to go. And I rested my arms on these two kind of booths that were on either side. On like the kind of the chairs there, so that my arms were out like in a Christ way, and I said, "Hey mom, look at me, I'm Jesus on the Christ, I'm Jesus on the cross, I'm dying." And my mom gasped. She was like, "No, don't make that joke." And probably made a silent prayer like, he didn't mean it, God, he didn't mean it. There's an inherited memory that's passed down. It's a generational trauma kind of thing. The fear of blaspheming, the fear of saying the wrong thing. So that can be a major impediment to speaking truth, speaking up for yourself, speaking your truth, speaking authentically. Grounding into your own power, stepping into your own power. It's vulnerable. And yet, there can be this inner conflict between these two aspects of you. The part of you that is scared shitless of being powerful, of being authentic, of claiming your authority to speak and say something. Say something real, say something true. And the other thing, how did I start this sentence? The part of you that's freaked out about it and the part of you that wants to. There's tension there. But the survival mechanism can only hold out for so long because it's pressure, it's a crunch. Here's what I've also noticed about truth. So I'm going to make a claim about truth without a PhD in philosophy. Something that you may disagree with, or someone out there may disagree with, is that there is a felt aspect to truth. What I've noticed about truth is that it has a physiological component to it. Have you ever noticed where if somebody says something that's true, and let's just say it's something you don't want to hear, like, somebody says to you, "Hey, this just isn't working. You need to stop this. It's not working anymore." And you just don't want to hear it. And you're like, "Oh, don't say it." But once it's said, it can't be unsaid. Once it's said, we can't pretend anymore. We can't hide. The truth has been said. The body knows when truth is being told. So therefore, it must follow that everyone has access to truth now, without thinking about it, without learning about it, without studying it, without even being an authority on it. And it can evolve over time where I can say something now that's true. As it comes out of my mouth, it's the truth as it appears to me, as it appears in my vision. Here's what I see, here's my experience, here's truth. And then I may watch the video later and go, "Oh, here's where there were some errors and could have been revised and could have been better." But then that's later and this is now. Why would I want to do this? Why am I making this video? Why am I telling you about this? I'll tell you what excites me lately. There's so much disempowerment in the world. I don't know if it's just my little internet bubble or if it's like your internet bubble too, because internet's so customized lately. Like we're all in our little internet cubicles. I don't know what your experience of TikTok is, or YouTube, or Facebook. I don't know what social media is serving you. But what I'm getting a lot of is these memes and these reports about how difficult it is to get a house, get a mortgage, how inflation has cut everybody's wages, how the movement of the economy, of the economics, of the politics, of what's happening, the world, climate change, the world is just feeling more and more disempowered, more and more without options. And as I've been investigating this concept of power, of empowerment, of being powerful now, is that being disempowered is just a hypnosis. And people who have power, say money or the ability to influence, they're succeeding if they can convince you that you are a victim of the world, of the situation, that you are without choice, that you are without power. But behind what is reported by our journalists, and behind this, the story of powerlessness, is a movement of individuals like you and me who are remembering our power, remembering our wherewithal to choose better, to choose deliberately, to investigate the field of opportunity, whatever's here, as opposed to what should be here, and taking it and going with it. Reminding people not with our words, but with our lives. Turning our own life into a work of art, a work of choice. Demonstrating that to everybody around to remind people their ability to choose. Their ability to choose self-empowerment. This is how the playing field is leveled. We can be controlled if fear is spread everywhere, if we can be made to be afraid. But if instead we make a commitment to supporting each other, supporting ourselves, supporting each other, receiving support from each other, smiling at each other, laughing with each other, keeping it light, keeping it cool, then there's no need to move to some sort of brink. You know, there's so many threats about the collapse of civilization. There's no need to go there. There's no need for any of it. A really cool idea that has been cemented in me for the last year or so, and I owe this to integral thinking and personality development, you know, models that talk about the maturity of a human, the different stages of maturity in a human, is that there's nobody out there that's really a bad person. There's nobody out there to be mad at or to blame. There's just different levels of maturity. That's all it comes down to. If somebody does something shitty, it means they're acting from a low level of development, a low level of maturity, a low level of compassion. You know, there's different developmental lines to be on. But generally speaking, if somebody does something shitty or bad or selfish or narcissistic or mean, then it represents a low level of development. It's not personal. And there's nothing wrong with it per se. You should still take care of yourself. You should still prevent yourself from injury and abuse. You should still keep your distance from people who harm or seek to harm you. You should, on a practical level, take care of yourself. But beyond that, there's nobody out there that's bad. Just people who have not yet learned to grow and increase their sense of identity, enlarge their sense of identity to encompass more people. There's a general correlation between maturity and who you consider to be kin, where the more mature and loving you become, the more falls under your purview of your circle of concern, of who you care about, of who you love. And it doesn't stop until it encompasses everything, everyone and everything. Where there's no longer a boundary between me and other. There's no such thing as other. There's just no other. So anyway, so the healer asked, okay, do you want to step into your power? Are you ready to step into your power? And it's like, no, no, no. And it's not safe. It's not safe. And it's not safe. But really, what it came down to, because we were actually getting to the end of the session, getting it to the end of the call. They were actually running over the time. And she was like, you know, she was giving me like a few more minutes to choose this. And it really felt like a closing window. And it was an apt way of considering it, because if I'm just in a state of trying to become who I am, then what? Is that how I'm conducting my life? Waiting for permission to be who I am, to become who I am? And who is permission? Will I ever get it? Of course not. Unless it's my own permission. And if so, am I willing to give this permission to myself? What if giving that permission to myself meant that I could truly live, truly step into my power, truly create, truly see what I'm capable of? Create without pulling my punches, create without secretly holding something a little bit back, just to be safe. What if I could create myself, this video, my work, my life? What if I could create with full abandon, giving myself over to it completely? What if I could step into authority and make claims about truth? Say something and say, this is true. This is true. What if I claimed my authority to say something is true? Something is real. Well, then now I'm a live player. Now I'm really participating. Now I'm really playing the game. And remember, that's all life is. This is nothing but a game. This has no significance outside of itself any more than playing a game of Monopoly or Risk or Catan has any reality outside of the confines of that particular game. We're pieces on a board. And so the question is, who's moving the piece? Are we being moved, or are we moving ourselves? So that's what I experienced. And in the end, a choice was made. Yes. Yes, okay. Okay, now. I choose it now. I step into it now. Remember, anything that I'm describing here, anything I'm describing in other videos, where if you're listening to this and you go, yeah, that sounds great, I would love that. What do I do? Choose it. Now. I intend for this, you might say. I intend for this. I intend to embody this, become this, have this. Employ the power of your intention. and then it'll move you in that direction. It'll get the ball rolling. It won't get you all the way, but it'll get you started. Consider this quality of authority. Who do you put above yourself? Who do you put below yourself? Who do you look to for truth? You can look to people, like this is not to say don't listen to people, don't recognize the authority of others, don't gain insight from other people. Of course, listen, read books, deepen your knowledge if you feel called to. But remember that it's just information. So, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. As of now, and until February 7th, my mastermind, Super Excellent number 2, the Personal Empowerment Mastermind, is still open for registration. You can register risk-free and try it out. If you don't like it, you can have a refund by the end of that window. I would love for you to join us. We're discussing power from a multitude of different perspectives with philosophies and practices and exercises that I take us through. There's a chat group where we stay in touch between sessions. We just had session 1. It was great. I would love to have you too. Join my newsletter at brenthiris.com. Get the free download. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for watching.